Welcome back to Decode Healthcare with Harshal. I am so pumped you're here. In Part 5, we tackled the incredibly heavy, complex world of spine coding, right? Well, today, we are taking a sharp turn. In this explainer, we're diving into abdominal wall tumors and open shoulder surgeries. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the CPT manual's musculoskeletal section, trust me, you are in the perfect place. We're going to break this down so simply that a 15-year-old could code it. Let's get into it. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to map out our musculoskeletal system journey, tackle abdominal wall tumor excision, dive deep into open shoulder reconstruction rules, look at shoulder fractures and dislocations, and then briefly look ahead to elbows. First up, Section 1, the musculoskeletal system journey. To really ground ourselves, we need to know exactly where these codes live. Context is literally everything in medical coding. So we're continuing our grand journey through the 20,000 series of the CPT book. We've moved down from the skull, past the spine, and right now we are focusing on the torso, specifically the outer abdominal wall, before we travel laterally out to the arms, starting with the shoulder. It's actually a highly logical progression if you just picture the human body from the center moving outwards. Moving on to Section 2, abdominal wall tumor excision. Now, what's fascinating about these specific codes, 22900 to 22905, is the exact anatomy they cover. Think about the front of the body. You've got the rectus abdominis, right? That's your classic six-pack muscle, whether it's popping right now or, hiding under a little bit of padding. When we're in the 22900 series, we are strictly coding procedures done to this abdominal wall. We're talking the muscles, the tissues, the fat on the very outside of the belly. We are absolutely not coding procedures for internal organs like the stomach or liver. If the surgeon is inside the actual abdominal cavity treating an organ, you are in the completely wrong section of the book. We're only dealing with the protective outer container here. So once you've confirmed you're on the abdominal wall, the golden guideline for picking your code comes down to one single thing: depth. You have to ask yourself and really scour that operative report. Is this tumor lodged just underneath the skin in the fat layer? If so, that's called subcutaneous. Or is it buried deep down inside or beneath that six-pack muscle, under the connective tissue? That is subfascial. Guessing the wrong depth is a massive error, so always verify exactly how deep that surgeon had to cut. Now, if the tumor being removed is malignant or super aggressive, you're going to want to look at the radical resection codes, like 22904. Radical resection is a very specific, intense term. It means the surgeon doesn't just scoop out the tumor, they purposefully cut out a significant chunk of normal, perfectly healthy surrounding tissue. We call these wide margins, and it's done just to be absolutely certain no bad cells are left behind. All right, Section 3, open shoulder reconstruction rules. Leaving the abdomen, we're moving laterally into the shoulder, specifically codes 23395 through 23491. And listen closely, because this introduces one of the absolute biggest pitfalls in all of medical coding. Burn this into your brain. The codes in the 2300s are exclusively for open surgeries. That means the surgeon is taking a scalpel, making a traditional large incision, and looking directly at the anatomy with their own two eyes. But if they're using a tiny camera and making little poke hole incisions, which is called an arthroscopy, those codes absolutely do not live here. Arthroscopy codes are way at the very back of the musculoskeletal section, specifically the 29800s. Mixing up an open shoulder repair with an arthroscopic one, yeah, that will get your claim denied instantly. Let's quickly picture the anatomy for these open shoulder codes. Take an open repair of a torn rotator cuff. The surgeon is working on a very specific group of 4 muscles and tendons that essentially hug the top of the arm bone, locking it firmly into the shoulder socket. When one of those tendons snaps or tears, your arm basically loses its power. So in an open repair, the surgeon makes that large open incision, finds that torn, rubbery tendon, yanks it back over the bone, and literally stitches it right back into the bone, usually with little metal or plastic suture anchors. This CPT book is honestly a lifesaver here because it logically organizes all these open shoulder procedures into distinct buckets. It's so structured. First, you've got incisions. That's just cutting into the shoulder to drain fluid or pull out a foreign object. Then excisions, cutting something out entirely, like a cyst or a bone tumor. And finally, repairs and reconstructions, like fixing that rotator cuff we just talked about. My advice? Always let the bold headings in the book guide you to the right neighborhood before you even start hunting for specific codes. Section 4, shoulder fractures and dislocations. When we're tackling traumatic injuries, that's codes 23500 to 23680, we are primarily looking at 2 major bones. First is the proximal humerus, which is the ball-shaped top of your arm bone. The second is the clavicle, better known as your collarbone. Fun fact, the collarbone is actually the most frequently broken bone in the entire human body. It sits right up top where it meets the shoulder blade. Now, when you're coding these fractures, you absolutely cannot guess. You have to follow a strict 3-step process every single time. First, identify exactly which bone is broken. Second, determine if the surgeon used a closed or an open treatment method. And third, check if they had to manipulate the bone, which is just a fancy way of saying they physically pushed or pulled the bone back into proper alignment. The biggest hurdle is step 2, closed versus open treatment. Let's make this super simple. Open treatment means the surgeon literally took a scalpel, sliced the skin wide open, and exposed that shattered bone to the room air. For instance, if someone shatters their collarbone and the surgeon cuts the shoulder open, lays down a heavy-duty titanium plate across the break, and drills multiple screws into the bone to hold it all together, that is open treatment with internal fixation. But if they just pop the arm into a sling without cutting the skin, that is closed treatment. And finally, Section 5, looking ahead to elbows. And just like that, you've officially decoded the outer abdomen and this super complex open shoulder. By mastering the difference between the abdominal wall and the internal organs and separating those open scalpel incisions from the tiny arthroscopies, you have conquered some of the hardest parts of this section. But here's the ultimate question. If the shoulder joint is this chaotic to code, what kind of surgical complexities do you think are waiting for us in the hinge of the elbow? Make sure you subscribe because in part 7 of this Explainer series, we are traveling straight down the arm to find out. Keep decoding, and I'll see you next time.